Hi everyone, it's Leanne from the Medicine Hat Public Library here, and today we're going to be cooking some meatloaf. This is a recipe that my grandma and my mom would make back in the day. They actually got it off of the back of a pack of Lipton onion soup mix. Where this recipe comes from, as you can see, we might have some cat help in the kitchen here. Donatello helps me cook quite a bit. So this recipe uses 6 main ingredients. I got all of these ingredients that I'm using today from the Safeway in the Medicine Hat Mall. The first one is a bottle of ketchup. I got this bottle for $4. The second ingredient is breadcrumbs. Any kind of container of breadcrumbs will work. I paid $3.50 for these. The next thing that we will be using is onion soup mix. The recipe calls for Lipton onion soup mix, but any kind of onion soup mix works. There are 4 pouches in this container, and I got that for $2.49. The next thing we'll be using is a can of tomato soup. This was $1.29. We're also going to be using eggs, and I got a carton of eggs for $3.24. And last but not least is beef. This recipe calls for 1.5 pounds of beef. I got this value pack for $12.52. There's a little bit extra than what the recipe calls for, but I'm going to use the extra beef and make taco mix out of it or something for lunch tomorrow. So my total cost for this recipe today was $27.04. Keep in mind that a lot of the ingredients that I bought, like the eggs and the breadcrumbs, can be used in other recipes. This recipe makes about 6 servings of meatloaf, so it's about $4.50 a serving. Our meatloaf only takes a few minutes to make. We pretty much just have to mix the ingredients together, put it in a loaf pan, and let it bake in the oven for a bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is add our beef and mix our beef with our onion soup mix. We only need 1.5 pounds of beef, and this pack has about 2 pounds in it, so I'm just gonna take the little bit left over, stick it in the fridge. Coco's giving us a hand. So you can use your hands to mix this up, or you can use 2 forks and just kind of like shred the beef into little chunks, whatever works the best for you. So now, after we have our beef together, we're just going to want to take the 2 eggs, crack them into a bowl, and mix and beat them up with a fork. And you can do that just by taking a fork, poking the yolk, and just kind of like swirling it around for about 30 seconds or so until the yolk and the egg white kind of combine into one yellowy looking liquid. Next, we're going to measure out a 1/4 cup of ketchup. You don't need to worry about being like super crazy precise with this, and it's always better to use a little more of your ingredient than a little less. We're also going to measure out about 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. This is a 1 cup scoop, so I'm just going to kind of make sure it's half full. And then we're going to take what we just measured out, and we're going to combine it with our beef and onion soup mix. You can mix this either with forks or with your hands. I prefer to use my hands just because that way I know the ingredients are kind of like all merging together, and I know that it's mixed really thoroughly. Using forks is fine too. So I'm gonna add my egg using my rubber spatula to make sure I get as much of it out of my bowl as I can. Coco says hi. Then I'm gonna add my breadcrumbs, and I'm gonna add some ketchup. Once you have all your ingredients in the bowl, you're also just gonna add 3/4 cup of warm water, and it's just gonna help us kind of mix all the ingredients together and make sure it's nice and even. So I'm gonna take my freshly washed hands. I'm just gonna bowl and I'm gonna kind of like mix it up and just make sure that everything is where it should be. When your meatloaf is all mixed together, it's gonna kind of look like Play-Doh and you'll be able to kind of form it into balls. After that's all mixed together, we're gonna put it into a loaf pan. The recipe calls for an 8.5 by a 4.5 by a 2.5 inch pan, but since I don't have that on hand, I'm just gonna use this cake pan. And we're supposed to bake this at 350 degrees for an hour. But because I'm using a pan that's longer but shallower, I'm probably gonna cook it for less time. I'll have it in the oven for about half an hour, and then I'm gonna check and see how done it looks. The thinner your loaf, the quicker it's gonna cook. So after my pan is all greased, I'm just gonna take our meatloaf mixture, I'm gonna put it in, and I'm just gonna kind of spread it around. I'm just using my hands to make sure it's fairly even and fairly level. As you can see, this is a lot thinner than a typical meatloaf, so I'm just gonna watch, see how it cooks, and see what happens. While my meatloaf's cooking, I'm gonna make some mashed potatoes to go with it. The mashed potatoes recipe that I use is pretty simple. What I have here are just some potatoes that I diced up and I boiled until they were soft enough that you could poke through them with a spoon or a fork and they would kind of give way a little bit. To make them into creamy mashed potatoes, I mix them with margarine and Carnation fat-free canned milk. I know it sounds weird, but it's really good and it's healthier for you with fewer calories than traditional mashed potatoes that are made with cream and butter. Alright, so there we have it. Our meatloaf baked in the oven for about 45 minutes. You'll know that it's done because it'll start separating away from the edges of the pan and it's going to get kind of like nice and brown and kind of crispy looking. If there's a little bit of grease in the bottom of the pan, no need to worry. That just happens sometimes with meatloaf. If you scoop it out of the pan, it'll be fine. When I make meatloaf, I like to pair it with mashed potatoes and some peas and carrots. The tomato sauce that we mentioned earlier goes on last. You can put it on the meatloaf, mix it in with some potatoes, and just use it to add a bit more flavor or creaminess if that's what you like. If you decided to make your own meatloaf recipe, let us know. You can tag us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope you enjoyed this cooking video, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!